I gotta be honest with you, the FBI was more screwed up than the outfit was. And all of a sudden you wind up in the trunk of a car or something like that. It's not right. It just wasn't right. It was against everything I believed in. So if you go and rat out somebody, as people say, for doing something like child molesting, I had a child molester that worked for me, and I got rid of him. Was I going to run to the Cook County State's attorney that's all corrupt? I mean, I'd have been whacked in 2 seconds. I was under, that was it. I'm looking for the wiretap for you because I want you to have it. But I knew both their voices. That's why they called me in to verify it. He said, these guys are running wild out here. He said, these cowboys, they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And he was blaming Frank on everything. I mean, all the fault. And so somebody said to him, well, you better get your clean house. Get your house in order. Now that was JL, Joey Lombardo, talking to Tony.
Cullotta, grab your favorite brew. Ask a question, he'll answer it for you. The Mafia, the Mafia, the Mafia, the Mafia. You better hit prescribe if you know what's good for you. Drinking a cup of coffee with Frank Cullotta. He'll tell you a lot. He's Frank Cullotta.
Welcome back, everybody, to Coffee with Cullotta Presents. And today, we present Red Wemette. So, Red, good afternoon, number one. Thank you for coming on and doing this interview. Let's just jump right into it. Where were you born?
We just talked about early parts I wrote in my book about how my father used to work for Polk Brothers in Chicago, Melrose Park. And I don't know, he did something wrong and he was out of work for a while. So he went down to Moline, Illinois. We went to Moline to actually, for his business. And I was only a teenager. And it was Super X Pharmacy that he worked for. He was a pharmacist, but he went back to school for that. But at any rate, they had aside from the pharmacy, they had Kroger there because they were all owned by Kroger. It was a Kroger shopping center. And they had a little place called Thrift Town, which is kind of like Turnstile with Jewel. I don't know if people are going to remember all this stuff.
I remember Jewel.
Oh, well, you remember Turnstile?
Yes.
They had one out in, he worked there for a while too. Out in, I think that was Skokie. He worked out in Skokie. It was out in that area. But anyway, we went down there, and that's kind of where I ran into my first thieves, that were really stealing. And I just happened to mention it to my father, and the owner, or the manager, Gene Barr, of the thrift town that I was working at, he made me manager of the sporting goods store. And I was only a kid. I mean, I had to lie about my work permit and everything. But because he wanted to suck up to my dad, because he borrowed money from my dad when they'd come in and do an audit, he'd go over and say, hey, we got a lot of checks coming through. Can I get 100 grand from you out of the safe? My dad always had the money to say, yeah, well, he works for the same company. And then all of a sudden it all came together. And basically that's when I ratted out a lot of people. And my dad got a promotion for it. And they moved him to Ford City at, 95th Street. The old Ford plant, where they used to make airplanes and everything. They opened up Ford City. And that was the biggest mall at the time under one roof. And he got the top store, as a drugstore. And so that's where it all started. But we moved to Cicero. And that's where I knew a lot of people, at that time. I knew a lot of people. Old timers that used to talk about Eddie Cancel being shot down and a lot of things like that. Christy Burkus, he was a town attorney at the time. He became the attorney or the mayor. But that's kind of where it really started. And it went on from there. I joined the Marine Corps, and I was shipped overseas. And when I came back, I was out of touch with reality. Things that were going on in the world. So I wanted to meet my uncle, my Uncle Roy, who was an alcoholic. My parents didn't want me to meet him. And I know why now, because he hung around with some savory characters. And the first one I hooked up with was Curt Hansen. And he was a hitman for Jimmy Catuara. That's on the South Side. So that's how that got started. And it just went there and it's snowball effect. And Jimmy sent me out to Las Vegas. I didn't know it at the time because the guy who I met there sat down in a booth with me. He knew what I looked like. And I was supposed to pick up a package and I didn't know what it was. And so I said, okay, but I was a guest at the Stardust. And so they paid for everything. Everything was paid, just sign your name. So as I was leaving, or before I left, I won a lot of money there. I won a lot of money. I bought my first apartment building when I came home. I bought my first apartment building. I was only a kid, like 22 years old. And here I am, I bought a 6-flat. And I made a lot of money on it. But the kick was, he sat down at the table with me and we shook hands. And later on, he told me that when I checked out, I was going to get a grip. He called it a grip. And it was a leather bag. And he said, don't open it. Don't play any games with it. Put it in the trunk. Drive safe going home. Don't get any tickets. And so I said, okay. And I just went along with the program. Jimmy Catuara asked me to pick him out a pair of shoes. Pick me out a nicer pair of shoes while you're out there. So I said, okay. He said, the visit, your whole vacation's on me. So that's kind of where it started.
So you were in the Marines. How long? You shipped overseas. Where to?
Well, after my basic and everything else, I was shipped to 19, 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. Basically, we were up at Courtroom, and they called us the Walking Dead. There was very few people that came back. I lost a lot of people, a lot of friends, and people I made acquaintances to. And joining the military is, you meet people from all over the United States. You meet them from Georgia, California, everywhere. So some of those people I became attached to. They told us not to, but I left a lot of people back there, a lot of people. So when I got home, I had the Superman complex where I had no fear. I didn't have fear of anything. The mob was a piece of cake to me. I looked at them and said, these guys are getting in trouble, going to jail. They're killing each other left and right. It was an easy job for me, very easy.
Where again were you sent? Where did you fight?
Quang Tri Province in Vietnam.
In Vietnam, okay.
Quang Tri Province in Vietnam.
Okay.
Up in the DMZ. I was up in the DMZ. We were only about 40 miles an hour, or 40 miles from the border. Sometimes we crossed over into the border. Sometimes we went over in Thailand. But it was bad. It was really bad. And I came home without a Purple Heart. I never got wounded. As a matter of fact, funny story about that is Captain Durso, my captain, my company commander, he told me, he said, when we were getting to relief, he's going all over your paperwork. He turned around and said to me, no Purple Heart? That doesn't look good on your record. Go out and get scratched by some barbed wire so I can give you a Purple Heart. But I seldom talk about Vietnam. I really do. I don't like it. It's a bad memory. Very bad memory.
That's what most people who were in Vietnam say. Or World War II that I met, or...
And I believed in it. I bought into it like a young kid. I was only 17 when I joined. And I bought into it like mom's apple pie and everything. And after I got back, I looked at it and said, they screwed us. And at that time, a lot of people were getting drafted in the 60s. So what happened with me was when I got back, I joined a young Republican Party in Chicago that was unheard of. But we started a group and it was called Old Enough to Die, Old Enough to Vote. So we changed the voting from 18 to 21. And I felt very proud of that. I felt very proud of it. I knocked on doors. I did everything I could do.
You mean you changed it from 21 to 18?
Yes. It
You,
used
you said 18 to 21. I just make sure that, okay. Okay.
it was 21 to vote then, and we got it passed.
Wow, that's pretty wild stuff.
I felt accomplished. I was always trying to do something good for other people.
Were you drafted or did you just go and join?
No, I volunteered when I was 17. Like I said, I bought into the whole mom's apple pie and communism and all the rest of it and said, I'm going to fight for my country.
Huh?
I came back very disappointed. It was a waste. It was a waste. It really was. And now we look at it in history, and I see people with tours that go over to Vietnam and Americans that go over to look at, and I say, I would never spend one dime on that country. Never. It was very bad. And communists did take over. I mean, Saigon is now Ho Chi Minh or whatever they call it. I don't know what it is now. I don't keep up with it.
Wow. So you get this feeling of immortality when you return.
Oh, yeah, I had no fear. I didn't care about anything.
Okay, so you're in Chicago, and you ended up in Chicago, back in Chicago, and what happened? How did you get involved with the Chicago
I
Outfit?
watched Curt Hansen beat some guy to death with a blackjack. He had a pistol in one hand, a snub-nose 38, and a blackjack in the other hand, and he beat this guy to death. And afterwards, he told me to leave. I worked for him as like a coffee boy or whatever. I worked in his restaurant or whatever at the Valley View Yak, which was on Lincoln Highway, which I'm sure you're familiar with, US 30.
Oh, yeah.
And it was out in Frankfort, Illinois, and unincorporated. I think it was Will County. But any rate, it was a bad scene, and he used me. I was just a punk kid. To him, I mean, he was like in his 50s or 40s or whatever. I was always the kid. I was younger than everybody else. So things happened, and I got to meet his brother, Ken Hansen, which later turned into a very famous case called the Schuessler Peterson murders. And I catch a lot of flack on that sometimes from other people because they don't know the real story. I reported that to the FBI, and they never did anything. And so afterwards, when I had a falling out with the FBI, what I did was contact a friend of mine who was at ATF. And we were talking about the Helen Brock murder or disappearance, but she was murdered. At any rate, he'd known me from Grand and Ogden. In 1986, I met him, Jimmy DeLauro. And he was going down Mikey Switek, Bambulis, and all these guys from the neighborhood that he busted. And he wanted to know because I was on the inside. Well, the FBI had a fit when I said I'm going to meet with them. And the U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney said, he overrode the FBI. And he said, well, we have to tell you, you can't meet with him. So I did. And after I met with him, we developed a good relationship. So later on in the years, after I pulled the plug in September 15th, 1988, and killed the operation in Chicago on Extortion with Schweihs, which I videotaped all that stuff for years. But what happened was I was told that it was hearsay, that Hansen told me it was hearsay. And Jimmy, in a late evening conversation, said to me, that's not hearsay, that's a confession. And I knew too many facts. So they built a case, they put it together, we tried the guy, convicted the guy, and I get a lot of flack because some people will tell me, like Mike Parker did from CBS News, he said, why did you wait 26 years to actually go and bring that in? And I said, I told the FBI about it. Who else are you supposed to do? Was I going to run to the Cook County State's attorney that's all corrupt? I mean, I'd have been whacked in 2 seconds. I was under, that was it.
Mm-hmm. So you did not know Frank Cullotta?
No, I never met Frank Cullotta. I heard people talk about Peanuts. Paul Panczko used to talk about him. A lot of people that I knew him, but you know, he was in and out of prison a couple times and during that era, and so I never really saw him.
So everybody on the channel wants to know in questions, because nobody's heard them. And I understand you told me that you heard and you read the transcripts of the phone call between Tony Spilotro and Joe Lombardo, and Joe Lombardo is telling Tony, you have to clean your dirty laundry. You heard those, and you heard another wiretap that was Tony and Joe in a hotel room. Tell us.
The FBI used to bring me in to listen to wiretaps and verify the voices on the wiretaps. And it just happened to be between Joey Lombardo, which I was very close to. I used to see Joey like once a week. I mean, I used to go over to the spot over at Grand and Ogden where I suggested you go by Jimmy Kozo's place, because that was the hangout. That's where nobody hung out on Ohio Street at Joey's apartment. I mean, he would go there. There was a bar, there was Olympic-sized swimming pool. There was a lot of things there. I mean, it was set up. When we'd have dinner there, there'd be like maybe 50, 60 people at these long tables, and the girls all waited on us, and we just hang out by the pool and talk and stuff like that. But that's where I got to meet a lot of people, and I got along with everybody. I mean, it was just one of those kind of guys.
So what type of business did you own in Chicago?
I started out with Curt Hansen in slot machines, and we were putting them in Chicago Heights, East Chicago, Indiana, all around the steel mills. Every place around the steel mills, where the old Polish guys and what do you call them, the foundry makers and everything, they go in and spend their paychecks, and the slot machines were making a lot of money. And then all of a sudden we got a call, or Curt got a call, and he said, we're out of business. And he said, I asked him what happened, and he said, Jimmy called me, and he said, Al Pilotto said, get out. And his brother was chief of police. It was like, I rented a trailer and everything. I brought these things, hundreds of them, and put them in all taverns. Most of them were bookmakers and stuff like that. They didn't even say anything. We just bring it in and say, yeah, okay. That was it. And we collect the money out of them in wheelbarrows. We had wheelbarrows full of money we used to take out of them. So I loaded all that back up, took it back over to Valley Midwest. It was over on Saginaw by Belmont, and brought all the machines back. And basically after that, I wanted to go into, for reasons being, I used to attend bar at big girl places, so on Rush Street, the Gals, 6 East, Chestnut, and on Wall Street in Old Town. There was Infernos, there was the Crystal Pistol, there was the Nocturne, which was established in 1938, and it had been there all the time. It was a private club. Bill Niff owned it, and he was like 70 years old when I went to work for him. So, and I was just what, 22. I mean, and I enjoyed it. I really did, because it was good money. I was making very good.
Again, for the viewers that don't know what a B-girl joint is, because I didn't know, and I worked in strip clubs, and I never heard the term B-girl. What is that? Can you explain it?
The girls, first of all, they were strip clubs. There were gals that got up and stripped, but there were B-girls that came around, and they would sit at your table or come and sit at the bar by me. And if there was a customer there, and it was my job to say, buy the lady a drink, sir. And if he did buy a drink, she got a swizzle stick. And what she was drinking wasn't really liquor. She was drinking tea. And so, but it looked like liquor when I pour it, right? And so that swizzle stick, she would turn in at the end of the night, and she got paid for how many drinks she could hustle. And my idea was just to be easygoing with everybody, smile at everybody, make everybody happy. That was the whole game. And I had a personality. It worked.
The guys that came in from the suburbs, that didn't understand how these joints operated. When you got in and sat down at a table in order to drink, come on, how did it work?
Well, they get their asses kicked. A lot of them got their asses kicked. Let me tell you, there were people that used to come in from Arlington Heights and all these different suburbs. They come downtown Chicago to see Rush Street or something, and they sit on a table. It's a dark bar with a big bar, but or big room with a fairly decent bar. But most of the little tables, they were like 12 to 14 inches, and it was dim, and they put a little bit of light on there and a small lamp, and there was a card on each table, and nobody read the cards, but it would say 5-drink minimum. And so they'd order a drink. Well, when they got there, when the waitress got there and said that'll be $69.95 or $70 for one drink, they turned around and looked and said, we're not paying that, and started to walk out. Well, they were all connected joints, and they had deals with the police in the 18th district, and also detectives that used to come by. So what most of the guys used to do was, especially Nicky Stevenopoulos, he left the country, went to Greece to avoid prosecution. But what he used to do was he'd hook these guys from the suburbs, and when they owed like $300-400 and they didn't even drink anything and they tried to leave, he would call the police. The police would get there. He'd say he was going to sign a complaint. They'd wind up begging him not to go to jail. He'd get his money. The cops would get a payoff, and they got away. Although some of them took real beatings. They fought. They said, I'm not doing this. I'm not paying it. What kind of clip joint is this? And they were bad. They were bad people. A couple of times I had a pistol in the, Nick Stevens threw me a pistol and said, hide it in the ice machine, get rid of it because the cops are coming. But he had threatened them with pistols and blackjacks and all kinds of stuff. They were bad people.
So when you were done with your bartending days era, what was the next business you went into? The slot machines? And then...
During the bartender days, there was a guy named Vito Dominicus. He was a straw man on one of the licenses at the Snake Pit. And I filled in for him a couple times. And he started working at the Over 21 bookstore, which was out of Cleveland, Ohio. And Cleveland didn't have permission to be there. They never asked anybody. So I was talking to Irv Weiner, and he said, I told him, all these guys screwed me. They wouldn't pay me my paychecks. But I was getting like $200-300 a night in tips, but they never gave me my pay. And I was telling him, and he said, get in the car with me. So Irv went with me. We went to each place. And I was telling him about the Over 21 bookstore. And he goes over there, and the guy, he had a 45 behind the counter, and he threatened Irv. And I'll never forget Irv telling me this. He said, they didn't stop making pistols when they had his. And he reached in his pocket, and he had I think it was a Model 36 Smith & Wesson. And he wasn't afraid of anything anyway. But he went inside, and the guy tried to pull a pistol on him. He smacked him around a little bit in the office and made him open up the safe. And he took a gob of money from him and left. And he said, take all this money. He said, take it. And then as we left there, he said, you're going to run this guy out of business. So we went back. Joey got involved, Lombardo, jail. And he said, go next door. The closest place that you can get to him, cause him all the aggravation in the world. Because when we're there, he has no reason to be there. And what they did was they were going to, Irv said they were going to run him out of the city. What they did was they put the arm on him, and they started collecting from Cleveland. Every time I made trouble for them, they had to go to Cleveland, who went to New York, who called Chicago, who called some other guys, and they used to come out and chew me out in public. It scared me the first time. These, bruisers, they came out and they were talking tough. And then I told Joey about it, and he laughed. He just said, don't worry about it. And then one time, one of the guys came up to me and he said, keep making the trouble. Keep making trouble for him, because every time you do, we get half. The guys that come out and collect, they get half of what they collect. And so he said, keep doing it. There's 500 in for you. There's 500. And I couldn't do it because that's extortion. But that's what I did. I think it's important to add, Adam, that in August of 1971, I approached the FBI and told them, this has got to stop. There are too many people popping up at the airport, O'Hare Airport, in trunks of cars. And people that were bookmakers or something like that, they really weren't bad people. They didn't kill people. And I had this thing about death when I came home from Vietnam. Nobody deserves to die. Not over something simple. Not over money. I can't see somebody being murdered over money. I really can't. Never could.
A lot of people get murdered over a lot of different things.
Yeah, but I could see it over somebody being raped or, something bad happening, crimes of passion or domestic violence. I saw a lot of that. But the truth of the matter is, because somebody owes you some money or they're taking away from your living in the neighborhood because you're an independent bookmaker, and all of a sudden you wind up in the trunk of a car or something like that, it's not right. It just wasn't right. It was against everything I believed in. So I believed I was Captain Crusader and I was gonna whip the world. And I finally found out that you really couldn't. You could only make a dent in it. You couldn't stop it, but you could make a dent in it. So that was my motivation.
That was your motivation to go to the feds and wear a wire and
Right. Well, I didn't wear a wire. They wired my whole house. I had switches on the walls, and when I go in, I'd flip the switch, and I'd sit down and sit with Louie Eboli, Louie the Mooch. I'd sit with all different kinds of people. Frank Schweihs was a regular. That was an interesting story. We finally prosecuted him for extorting me, but it was set up that way. My code name, by the way, was my commanding officer in the Marine Corps, Art Durso. That was my code name. When I called at the office, they never saw me. I only worked with one agent. He was my control agent. And I would call in. They didn't want to come close to me. They didn't want to bring any heat on me. So I would call in and give them the information that they needed. If I knew somebody was going to be murdered in advance, I told them about it. Not all the time. They never really caught anybody in the act because I got to be honest with you, the FBI was more screwed up than the outfit was. They really were in the early days.
Wow. Well, everything was corrupt. I mean, everything was corrupt. The Chicago Police Department,
you had to watch the
judicial
cops.
system, everything.
I mean, in my position, I had to watch the cops. I had to watch the deputy sheriff's office, Ogilvy. I mean, that was a mess all in itself. So, and the Cook County State's Attorney, everybody owned them.
Right.
So if you're going rat out somebody, as people say, for doing something like child molesting, I had a child molester that worked for me, and I got rid of him. But I called somebody from the police department and I said, I see this going on. I don't like it. And they arrested him. They did a sting on him.
Now, was this somebody who worked for you at the bookstore?
He worked for me at the pornography store, and he had young boys that were under 18 waiting outside the store. And I kept trying to shoo them away. And they said, oh, we're waiting for Jim Spear. And, I talked to Jim about it, and he says, oh, don't you just like it? And at that time, there was a band called Menudo. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. It's a little black group. A Spanish group called Menudo. And this guy was a pedophile. And so I set him up, and he wound up getting 12 years, 13 years.
Yeah.
But I liked a clean house. I didn't allow drugs. I didn't allow a lot of things.
You were criticized.
Everybody knows what went on in those peep show booths. I mean, you go in and watch a peep show. Boy, were they tough to clean up. I used to hose them down with the hose. I'd throw bleach in there.
Oh, man. And then when people were leaving on their way out, you would hand them a handy wipe and say, thanks for coming.
No, they didn't have handy wipes in. But it was a joke. It really was.
You were criticized for a pedophile for not turning him in years and years, waiting years and years for.
But the FBI didn't want to do anything.
Can you tell me that story?
Yes, it was a very famous story. It was a triple homicide that happened in 1955. And it was Bobby Peterson, who was 14, Anton Schuessler, and John Schuessler, his brother. They were 13 and 9 years old, respectively. And when Ken Hansen, brother of Curt Hansen, was intoxicated, he was trying to impress me about different things and the outfit. And he asked me about my Marine Corps experiences. And his brother was at Iwo Jima, Curt Hansen, twice decorated as with a Silver Star. And he became a bondsman. That's where I met everybody, down the American bonding. So he was telling me about that. And during the process, he got a little bit too tipsy. And every time he got drunk, he tried to talk about these boys. And he said, I came that far becoming headlines myself. And he told me what he did. Well, I repeated to the FBI. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. So when I was through with the FBI, when I was done with them, Jimmy DeLauro got a hold of me, or I got a hold of Jimmy. He was working on another case, and he went over all these people that were in the horse industry, Silas Jane, all these other horse mafia, and Sammy DiStefano used to come out and shoot his gun in the arena. He'd ride around like a cowboy in the arena. I mean, it was crazy days. It really was. But at any rate, what happened was, while I was talking to Jimmy, he said, how do you know all these people? And I said, I met him through Hansen. I mean, he knew Cy Jane, Frank Jane, he knew the Jane gang and all that. And so he was surprised because he was kind of fact checking me, you know, to test my mind. But he knew I knew everybody from Grand and Ogden. He knew I knew Lombardo, Cozo, Vince Solano. He knew I knew all these people. Mikey Switek, Bamboulas, he arrested them on a cocaine charge and an altered firearm charge, him and his partner. And so he interviewed me then against the wishes of the FBI. I was kind of a rogue. If they told me you can't talk to this guy, I said, why? You don't own me. I could talk to anybody I wanted. So while we were going over this, he said, how did you know all these people? I only thought you knew mob people. And I said, no, I knew all the horse mafia too. And he went down a list of names. And when he got to Ken Hansen, he said, what's his claim for fame? And I said, well, he says he killed these kids, you know, these 3 little boys back in 1955. And here we were in 1993. And he said, really? He said, I know about that case. He said, I just got out of the Army and got on the job. I was a Chicago police officer then. And so he asked me some questions about it. And he sent an investigator out, and he came out himself to see me. I went through the undercover division of the FBI. They made press releases that said I was in witness protection. That wasn't true. I went through the undercover division of the FBI. So when they had to get permission to see me. And when they did, it was, I was told later when they walked out, John Rotuno told me, he was probably the best agent I ever worked with. But John Rotuno told me that everything fact checked. He said, everything you said was true. And he said, we got to get somebody to confirm it. And so I was thinking, who can confirm this for me? And there was only one person that I knew that could confirm it, that was maybe 2 years older than I was. And he had been, I guess he was Ken Hansen's homosexual lover. And he saw me coming out of the trailer that day or that night. And he said, did he tell you about the Peterson Boys? Because that's the way it was referred to, as the Peterson Boys. I didn't know anything about Schuessler at that time. And so I said, no. And he goes in the back door. He was angry. He wanted to fight. And he said, you calling me queer? Because I told him, I said, he's all yours. I don't want any part of him. He's all yours. So he went to the trailer. They lived in a house trailer at Sky High Stables, 17201 South Central. in Tinley Park. That was unincorporated then, it was Cook County.
Speaking of the horse racing, I'm just going to throw this out. This is random because you knew about all of the horse racing. One of the live videos I talked about this guy, his name was Ben Scora. And he had a house that was all animatronic and all automated. And he was an inventor. And he invented a remote start for a car. Had one of these, and a couple of guys showed up at his house, a couple of heavies, and said, "We want you to make this remote thing and make it so it'll activate the shocking device, the shocker." And they shoved the shocker in the horse's ass. And they would use the shocking device to make the horse. Ever hear about anything like that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I had a horse that I was racing at Sportsman Park, and I had my license and everything. And Chili Rich was there, and Chili fixed every race that there was. I mean, this guy, if you got a tip from Chili, bet on it. And so I did. And my horse was running. Toll Collector was the name of my horse. And he went off at a very, I think it was 31 to 1 or something like that. He went off at, but the toll boards kept bringing him down. But still, they juiced him. And so it was like, you know, you don't have to cash your pari-mutuel tickets that day. You can go back any day and cash them. But I was getting them, and instead of going to a $50 window, and I get people on Facebook now, and they say, "Oh no, it's all the same." Well, it wasn't back then. If you went to the $10 window and you bought $2,000 worth of tickets, you had $10 tickets, so you could cash in 2 at a time. You didn't have to pay tax on them. And so that's what I did, because he said, "I hope you brought your bushel basket with, because you're going home with a lot of money." And as soon as the race was over, they spitboxed him. And over the PA system in Cicero at Sportsman's, Hawthorne was right next door. They said, "Would Mr. Wemette come to the racing secretary's office? Anybody seeing report to the racing secretary's office." By the time I could get to my car in the parking lot, the security was there, plus the Cicero Police Department. They didn't handcuff me. They brought me up there. And while I was up there, they took the decals off my car to get in. And he took my license and just tore it in half. And he said, "You're through in pari-mutuel, period." And I said, "I didn't do anything. I really didn't. I didn't fix the race." But they used hot shots. And back in those days, cattle prods and other things were used to torture people. Sam DiStefano used to do it. Curt Hansen got tortured. He had a house in Elmhurst, and the Chicago PD came out there. That was when Tommy Durso and Mikey Gargano were involved in a murder, and they were connected with Curt. And so he told me that they came all the way out to Elmhurst where he lived, hung him in the basement, and took his pants down and hit him with cattle prods in his genitals and everything, trying to get him to talk. He never talked. He was a tough son of a gun.
Durso and Gargano are the two that ended up in jail with Frank.
Years
That's
after
right.
they hit him
That's
with
right.
the cattle prods.
No, they got life sentences. They were two hitmen.
Mhm.
I think in 1964, and Mikey Gargano got out. I know somebody's related to Gargano. Her name is Marchese. She's Sicilian, but I don't know her anymore. I know her kids because she passed away like 10 years ago. But Mike got out. Durso, no, he didn't get out. But those were back in Frank's day. I'm sure he knew them.
Yeah.
I'm sure he knew them.
Yeah, they hung him out of the window downtown at the police
those
station.
guys who hung out.
You said
You know how
other
many-
people. You said
That
other.
was in the
It happened to
Yeah,
other
that was-
people.
that was in the courtroom upstairs on the 11th floor. There was several courtrooms up there. There was gun court, there was a bond court, all different kinds of things were on the 11th floor. Well, if you went to the bathroom, those guys were waiting for you, and they had a big window that opened up. They take it, hang out the window, and you better cooperate. If they wanted money, you better give it to them, because they would drop you. They weren't joking. And it was out the back window that was towards Balboa Drive. On this side was State Street, and downtown it was Balboa Drive there. It wasn't Clark Street or anything else. You know, that's the way it used to be. When you get to town, you'll see it.
Okay. I'm definitely.
And American Bonding is right next door, or used to be right next door. The building was owned by Joey Cosentino, and he swept it all the time. And that's where I met Tony. That's where I met everybody. Irv Weiner, Joey, Milwaukee Phil. I met Phil Aldericio there. Frank Schweihs, all those people. Now, they all didn't talk to me in the beginning because I was just a kid and an outsider. Later on, I developed relationships with them. And it was social. It wasn't business. I wasn't out committing burglaries or doing this or doing that. But I was well trusted as a kid because I just kind of kept my mouth shut. So they thought.
How did you know Tony? How well? Spilotro.
Very well. Tony was a good friend of mine. I like Tony. And I get criticism about that now too. I get people hit me up on Facebook and they say, you befriended, or on YouTube even, they'll say, you befriended a murderer that did all these terrible things, and they criticize me for it. But I didn't see that side of Tony. When Tony came to town, he always came to visit me. He'd stop in at my house, and all the other guys would call me in advance and say, is it okay to come over? Not Tony. He'd come when it's dark out at night, and we'd sit around, drink scotch. He loved to talk about women. That's all he talked about. It was his conquest, and we just hang out. But I never saw the bad side of him. I never saw him scream. I never saw him raise his voice that much. I mean, it wasn't like a lot of people have asked me questions because they saw Casino, and they said, did he swear a lot? Was he always using the F word? And I said, no, not really, but he did swear. I mean, he did swear. I heard him a couple times, you know, that son of a, it depended on his attitude. But I liked Tony. I liked him a lot. As a matter of fact, during, I kind of tested him during one visit when I lived at 4121 Richmond, and he popped in. We'd had quite a few drinks, but I still held my liquor very well. And I told him, I said, Tony, there's something we should talk about. And he said, what's that? And I said, I'm a mole for the FBI. And he never gave me up. Not even till the day they murdered him. He never gave me up. I lost a friend. I lost a good friend. And when I tell some people that, they don't understand it because they look at him, what they read in the papers and whatever. They don't know the personal touch. It's like your relationship with Frank. They don't know the personal touch you had with him. I mean, he was a friend to you. Whatever he did in his past.
If you told Tony that you were a mole,
I wouldn't.
Oh, the FBI went spastic. The FBI went spastic. They said, you're going to get whacked.
yeah, why wouldn't you have been gone? I mean, that's
We were good friends. We were just good friends. We had a friendship. It had nothing to do with business. We never talked about business. We never talked about his business in Vegas. We never talked about my business in Chicago. We never talked about anything that had to do with any of the other guys, period. We're just friends. Maybe you and Lewis are like that, where you can, you know, smoke a cigar together or whatever. You were just friends. And that's what he was. I liked him.
So, what else do you know about Tony? What else can you tell me about Tony?
Well, I did a story about him that's a thing that's kind of funny. Al Bianca, that he was the finance manager at Barron's Lincoln Mercury. And the owner was Hershey Silver. And his wife worked for TRW Credit. And they got my father's credit mixed up with my credit. My credit was excellent. My dad was a bum. So I went in there to see it. They were over in Gale Street District, somewhere over by 16. And I went there, and his wife was like your height, and she picked me up by the throat. They double keyed the door, and she wanted me to fill out this application. to get my credit report. And they wanted everything. I mean, they want to know where I worked, the dates I worked there. I mean, they just didn't want my name, address, social security number, driver's license. They want to know everything. And I said, I'm not filling this out. And they said, well, you have to. And I said, I don't have to do anything. So I was trying to get out of the place, and she grabbed me by the throat. She lifted me up. She got me off the ground. I weighed about 200 pounds then, and she's got me up off the ground. So I grabbed her wrist to get him off my throat, and she's calling for this guy in the back room, and I figure he's got to be a real Amazon. You know, she's this big, and she's calling for help. God help the guy that's coming out. So I told my partner that was with me, I said, give me a piece. And we broke the window out. There was these desks, like school desks, where you can sit down and fill out these applications. I picked up one, threw it through the front window, and I left. And they called the police, and they had my tag number, which was 3400, 3400. To get a 4-digit tag in Illinois is rough. 5-digit tag means you're a city employee. 4-digit tag, I got mine through Carl Catuara, Jimmy Catuara's son. He worked at, he was supervisor over at Elston Avenue for the Secretary of State's office. Eventually, he was being groomed to be governor. All the people out of there became governors. Edgar, Jim Edgar, all of them, they all became governors out of there. But when Jimmy was murdered, that was it, you know, it was over. But anyway, what happened with the car was very interesting. After that incident, I went shopping and bought some clothes, suits, whatever. And when I got home on my private line that nobody had this private line. It wasn't even at my address. It was on somebody else's telephone pole, and they ran the line to me. The FBI did it for me. It was a separate phone I had in the corner that was red. It was a red dial. It had a dial on it. Didn't even have touch tone then. But at any rate, I get a call on it, and he said, "What'd you do today?" And I said, "I went out shopping." Why? And I knew who he was, and he knew who I was. I said, "How'd you get this phone number?" He said, "I got my ways." And meanwhile, the whole thing's being taped by the FBI, because I voluntarily let them, you know, they put it in, I let them tape it. And so he said, "Well, you better get over here." He said, "You heard a very nice lady today." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Come on over here and straighten this out." And I said, "I'm not going anywhere." I said, "You want to come and see me? Come and see me, but I'm not going anywhere." And I was a little upset over this. I hung up the phone. I'm pacing the floor. I'm a pacer. And the doorbell rings. And it's Tony. And he comes in. And he's got a big smile on his face. He had a twinkle in his eye when he was happy, you know. And so he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "This guy over, you know, he says he's Jackie Cerrone's nephew." And I said, "He told me to go over and meet him. He works at Barron's Lincoln Mercury." And so he said, "Come on, let's go for a ride." And we went over there. Well, as we went into the showroom, the salesman started leaving. This was about 9 o'clock at night. They didn't close till like 10, but the salesman started leaving. I mean, it was like a herd of cows. They just eventually dwindled to nothing. And Al Bianca was over in his office. He was the finance manager. And he came out. When he saw Tony, his face got all red. It really got red. But Tony went back in the back room, and he talked to Hershey Silver. And he told me, he said, "Walk around the showroom and just look at the cars. Make yourself busy." And so I did. Al came out and he said, "Have I got a problem here?" And I said, "I don't know. Talk to that guy." And eventually, Tony came out and he asked me to go and talk to Hershey Silver. And he was a short little guy. They both belonged in a carnival. He was like 400 pounds and maybe 5'6", and she was like taller than you are, and she weighed like maybe 200 pounds. And so I looked at them together. It was a joke. When you saw them together, it was a joke. You know, they really looked like they belonged in the carnival. But he begged me. He said, "If you could just apologize to my wife." he said, you know, we're being protected too. They were paying street tax to somebody. And he said, if you could just apologize to my wife, he said, I'd really appreciate it. And I said, look, I didn't do anything. She's the one that assaulted me. I said, and he said, well, her arms are all bruised. I said, that's what me trying to pull her hands off. And I finally relented. So she comes in the door. Evidently, he had called her and said I was there. And she starts pointing the finger at me, screaming at me and everything else. And so I said, I'm sorry. I finally, you know, just relented. I wanted a good thing for Tony. You know, Tony was there. And so I said, I'm sorry. And she said, no problem. If you have a problem in the future, don't come into the office. Just call me and I'll correct it over the phone. Well, in those days, you couldn't correct anything over the phone. She says, so anyway, peace was made. Tony, that year, it was a year after I bought a Mark IV. I had a Mark IV that was 460 engine. It was a real burner, really was. But anyway, there was a real decked out four-door. The Mark IV didn't have a back seat in it. I mean, it was very small. There was no room for legs. And I was looking at this town car, and it was maxed out with everything in it. It was a showroom car. And I'm looking at it, and Tony says, do you like that? And I said, yeah, but I got 2 cars already. And he says, do you like it? And I said, yeah, I like it. And he said, good. He said, call over for the owner. And he said, write it up. He said, I'm taking that car with me. So the guy was real happy, the owner. He's writing it up and everything. And he gets it all done and everything. He comes out and he's got the papers for Tony to sign. And we're just bullshit. And Al Bianca, I finally had a drink with Al Bianca. He went into his office and I thought he was getting a revolver or a weapon. And he was really pulling out a bottle of scotch. And he said, will you drink with me? The first time he asked me, I said, no. The second time, Tony was there and I said, yeah, I'll drink with you. Tony never talked to him, never said a word to him, never said anything about him. But he was Jackie Cerrone's nephew. And I don't think Tony got along that good with Cerrone anyway. But long and short was, Tony bought me the car. He said, as he was talking to him, he said, title it in his name and put it on my tab. That's he put it on my tab, a car.
So
Put it on my tab.
Tony Spilotro bought you a car.
Yes. I did a video on it.
Okay.
I did a video on it.
I
It's a true story.
Speaking of,
And you know who that car went to eventually? It went to Joey Lombardo's son, who was a union rep for some company. And I didn't need the car anymore. I didn't use it that much. I only think it had 34,000 miles on it. But he was looking for a nice car. It was only a year old. And it was garage kept. I mean, everything was nice on it. And so I drove it over to Kozo's place. And Lombardo's son was there, and I signed the title over to him. He paid a good price for it because it was the union bought it, whatever union he was. But you know, he wasn't the business manager. He was the what do they call the head of the union? I forgot the name.
Stewart?
the union steward.
He could have been a union steward, but he was the top guy. He was the CEO on that union.
Okay.
President of the union?
Yeah, he was the president of the union.
Okay.
He was the president of the union at that time. Joe was bringing up with unions, and Joe was big in unions, and so was Kozo, and that whole Grand Avenue crew. They liked unions. It was like they followed Accardo, they followed Milwaukee Phil, and that was Phil's crew at one time. And he turned it over to Joey when he went to prison.
Okay. Speaking of, you said you did a video about that, Tony giving you the car. You have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But like I said, some people say, this is BS, you know. This never happened. Or no, Tony would have never kept his mouth shut about you. I mean, he would have told everybody. You would have been dead.
Right.
So some people say that.
Sure. And a lot of the viewers on this channel definitely
If you look-
are gonna.
If you look at it, it's not like it's got seen that much. There's maybe 600 views on it, 500 views. I was doing this way before Frank started doing these. I put up YouTubes.
Oh yeah,
Because
you've been doing this since you've been doing this for 3 years now, or 4 years. I want to say is your oldest
since
video.
2016.
Right, 4 years now that you've been doing this, and we started this at the beginning of the year as a fluke of, hey, let's do this instead of doing a mob convention. Let's start a YouTube channel. I had not seen your channel at the time, not yet, until we started putting the videos up. And then people started commenting, hey, what about this? And started bringing your name up. And that's when I saw your channel. And then since this pandemic thing and everybody being on quarantine, everybody's starting channels. You know, it's like,
Everything is blown up now.
Everybody's starting channels right now. Right, and it's not easy, you know, to run a YouTube channel and put everything together, especially when you're doing it on your own. And you know,
I created the idea. Everybody told me I was nuts. The people around me that live around me, they said, "What are you doing?" Because I used to sit down in a chair and hit my Canon.
handy cam, right? That's what I figured, it was a handy cam.
Yeah, and I used to put it in a tripod and sit down, and I go to the chair, push the button, and I sit and tell a story, and that's all I would do. And I called them Red's Bedtime Stories.
Mm-hmm.
So to all of the prescribers that are watching right now, you can go check out Red's channel. I'm going to put a link in the description. You can
And
see
it's
the
not
videos.
only on my channel, because if you go to, there's other people that loaded a lot of things about me on YouTube that I have a channel now that's my own, but there's a lot of people on YouTube that if they did something that was on me and you type in Red Wemette under YouTube, it comes up. And there's a whole slew of things that I didn't really, you know, I didn't record them all, or I did record them and somebody else, they were off of Facebook and somebody else downloaded them onto there.
Okay.
I just started my own channel like maybe 18 months ago. And that was because I saw your channel and I said, how come I don't have my own channel? And I didn't know how to do it. So I looked at it and I finally figured it out. And I started uploading. I've got about 60 videos. They're not all up there.
You just haven't uploaded them, or you just took them down?
They're all in my, they're all in the computer.
Okay.
Just like the wiretap. I'm looking for the wiretap for you because I want you to have it. It's in an MP3, but it's of, you mentioned it earlier. It's of JL. The one's telephonic, and it's of JL talking to Tony, and he was telling him, Tony was complaining, but I knew both their voices. That's why they called me in to verify it. And Tony was complaining, and I don't know, he said, these guys are running wild out here. You know, he said, these cowboys, they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And he was blaming Frank on everything. I mean, all the fault. And so somebody said to him, well, you better get your clean house. Get your house in order. Get your house in order, clean house. Get your house in order, clean house, is what he said. Now that was JL, Joey Lombardo, talking to Tony. And that's a fact. I did run across the transcript, and if I fuzzed everything, you've probably seen my table's loaded with papers in the back. I'm going nuts trying to get that up for you guys.
Oh,
I want to say
I'd love to see it and hear it, and yeah, that would be awesome. Now, you put out a book. You wrote a book. How long ago?
2016, I released it.
okay. And what's it called?
Nobody Cares and What I Did About It.
Okay, and there's also, if you're interested in reading Red's book, there's also a link in the description to go buy his book if you'd like to get a copy of Red's book. And Red, they can also get autographed copies from you as well. Where can they do that?
You can get an autographed edition just by typing in redwemette.com on any email or whatever, or browser, and it'll go right to my page. And it has PayPal on it, and it's like joining you folks. I mean, you just buy it. And I charge the same price for an autograph book that I do for a one that you buy from Amazon. Amazon, you got to pay shipping and handling. There's tax, whatever. And I charge the same thing. It's $19.95 plus, I don't know, there's shipping and handling on it. But I've never had any complaints about it at all, ever.
Okay. So
And something I want to point out to you. There's somebody that's mentioned, you know, I watched your earlier interview and today, and something I want to point out to you. A lot of people said there's no money in books. Well, let me explain something to you. If you don't have an agent, if you don't have a co-author, I mean, all these people take 10%, 20%, whatever. By the time you're done, the royalties are nothing. I have no agent. I paid for my fact checking on it. So every dime comes back to me. It's just the cost of the printing of the book. Has it done anything? Yeah, it's done real well. Did I do it just for the money? No, I did it because I wanted to set the record straight, kind of like Frank. There was so much bullshit out there that people were saying about me, and I didn't like it. Even the newspapers were wrong. I recently, I don't know how many times I've said to different people in Facebook, you never know how inaccurate the newspapers are until they write an article about you. Then you really know. Then it's time to, you know, wake up and say, you know, they like headlines or they like a big name on a story.
Definitely. That's what sells papers. So what gets views? What, you know, on TV? What's going to bring somebody in to watch? So very true. Now, I'm just going to put this out there because a lot of the prescribers here are going to go, Adam, why in the hell are you interviewing Red Wemette? He was an informant. He wore a wire.
A rat. A lot of people call me a
just a piece of garbage, rat, bastard. What? So
3% of my people do. 3% of my fans do. And then
Okay.
I just don't, I exit them off. That's all.
this is coming from the more people that joined the channel and started prescribing here to Coffee with Cullotta, the further that the more people that won, the more haters that we found. The bigger the channel got, the more
Did you say that
haters.
again, please? I didn't hear it.
The more the channel grew and the more people who liked the channel, the more people hated the channel as well, and didn't like Frank, didn't
That's-
like. Well, even now
that's the
people
age
don't
of
like me.
computers. That's
So
the age of computers. That's computer business.
that's it. So the more people you get following you, the more people you get disliking you. You know, that's just
I've
how
had
it
people
goes.
tell me, I've been very nice to them, and I said, did you read my book? Do you know anything about me? And they said, I wouldn't waste my money to even because you're a rat. So they really don't know. And I just unfriend them, and that's it. I don't want to know. If they
So-
got that mindset, if they have that mindset, they're a criminal themselves.
So why did you do it? In a nutshell, why did you do it?
I thought I was doing something very, very good. I thought I was, I'm kind of a patriot. I thought I was going to make a change. I wasn't going to make the biggest change. That interview I did in Panama City Beach with a real nice gal. She did a 3-part series on me in 2016. And I explained everything in there. I cared. I cared a lot about people. I cared for the weak. I cared for the people that couldn't defend themselves. I cared about the poor guy that was drunk and got rolled or whatever. I really cared about people, and I still do. And I never was politically correct. I didn't go with the times and change words like, I'll be very frank, as far as people of color go, we used to call them colored people. I never changed to black. I never changed to Afro-American. I just had my own set of mind. As far as profiling people, I could look at somebody and profile them right away, because if I didn't, I would have been dead. I would have been dead a long time ago. And the FBI capitalized on that. Unfairly, I might add. a lot of times they said I was a paid informant. And I got a kick out of that when I was on a witness stand, even in Family Secrets. They said, you were a paid informant, isn't that right? And I said, yep, that's right. And then on cross-examination, Mitch Mars came across and said, how much were you paid? And I said, I really don't know. So he pulled out a sheet for me and I looked at it and it came out to $10,000 some $100 over a period of 20 years. It was $1.63 a day. So I didn't make a killing being an informant. And every time I did sign for something, when I got a receipt from him, or I got cash from him or something, it said for coffee, cigarettes, and cab fare. And I would sign, it'd be like $80, $200, you know, whatever. It was always under $200, under $100. It was small amount of money.
So you were, let me get this right. You were feeding the feds info for 20 years. And you didn't
18 years undercover, but I still kept going back to listen to these tapes. Whenever there'd be a tape, and they thought I could authenticate it because they didn't want to use an agent. They wanted an independent somebody to authenticate it. They didn't write my name. It goes in the file. It goes in Washington, D.C. And so they kept bringing me back and bringing me back. I went back, I don't know how many times I get on a plane. They paid for it all the time. But I was an authority on it. And there were some cases like in between Family Secrets. The inception of Family Secrets was in 2002. But just before that, they brought me back and they had a bunch of pictures on an easel. And they said, can you identify this guy? And I couldn't identify hardly any of them. But some of the old timers that were there, one of the pictures they showed me was Jimmy Marcello. And I said, I don't know the guy. I just don't know him. Anything that I could say, I did. I didn't, you know, bullshit my way through anything. That's just the way I am. I mean, you guys paid to bring me here, so I'll give you what you want.
Well, Red, it has been a very interesting time talking with you. Again, everybody, the link to the book, the link to Red's videos, to his channel, or it's in the description. You guys can open it up, check it out. And Red, if anybody, any of the prescribers have a question for you, specifically about somebody, and they leave it in the comments, would you be willing to come back on and let me ask you a few of those questions?
Sure.
Awesome.
I've watched yours, Adam. I love your professionality. I really do. I admire you. And also, I really feel the same way about Frank. I never knew him. I didn't agree with a lot of things he said, as we talked about, but it wasn't that I really put him down or trashed him. I corrected things that he said that I thought were inaccurate. Like when he talked about Frank Schweihs. Yeah, Frank was that way. He wouldn't shake hands with somebody. I think he, in one of your videos, he said he refused to shake hands with him when he walked in with Tony. But Frank was arrogant. I mean, he was hanging out with the big dogs, and there was no way that he wanted to know a common thief. Although he started out that way, he started out as a common thief, but he was a hitter. That's all he really did. He made his big money in hitting and extortion. So I understood that we had different views. And Frank was in prison a lot of the time when I was out doing things on the street. So I just never ran across him. But that doesn't mean that I wanted to show any disrespect to him. The idea was that I wanted to clarify it. And several times before I even talked about that video, I made comments, why don't you mention Frank Schweihs? Because he talked about the Grand and Ogden crew. And I kept mentioning it. And finally, when he did get into it, I turned around and said, Coop, you never called him that to his face, I'll tell you that much. I mean, and by the way, that story about Louie Eboli is true. Where Louie, he punched Louie Eboli out and Joey gave him a brick. That is a true story. And that actually happened on Ohio Street in Lombardo's backyard.
Yes, that was verified by me.
That's
Somebody
a true story.
else too. Yes.
I know about
true.
it. Everybody used to talk about it, but I never met Frank. I didn't know who he was.
Gotcha.
All right, Red. Well, listen, I thank you again for coming on. Once again, everybody, in the description, the links for the book, for the Red's channel, if you want to go see some of his videos. And if you have a question, you want to put it in the comments, I'll bring Red back on because he said he'll come back on. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Red.
You're welcome.
Hey, and thanks for your service too. I was not in the service. My father was, and I.
Hey, thank God you missed it all. Thank God you missed it all. Adam, you're here and you're in one piece. I praise God every day. Every day I'm alive. I never thought I'd make it past 20, and then I never made it 30, and then 40 and 50, and now I look at myself and I say, how did I make it this far? God's blessed me.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Red. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
You got it, guy.